Hello, everyone, and welcome back. And today we are going to be doing something a little bit different. I am going to be doing my standard breakdown of a book. However, I was recently, well, let me backtrack for a second. For those of you that don't know, last year I received my master's degree in information and library sciences, and I am actually a certified librarian. And I was recently digging around on my computer, my old laptop, and found some odd, like, video book reports that I did for school, which are kind of similar to what I do here. However, the outline that we had for school was we were trying to get them as close to 30 seconds as possible. So I thought it would be fun. I have 3 videos from school that I was able to find that aren't overlapped with videos I've already done for YouTube. But I thought it would be fun to do YouTube videos for those books, and then insert my old 30-second videos from school so you guys could kind of see the difference and where I've come from. And so the very first one we're going to do, this is the first one, and the book that I'm going to be speaking about is The Killing Floor by Jack Reacher. Let me see if I can straighten that for you. There you go. Or, I'm sorry, The Killing Floor by Lee Child. It is a Jack Reacher book. It's the first Jack Reacher book, actually. Okay. Before I get into the book, I'm going to go ahead and insert the video clip now. And then when we come back, I will give you the breakdown for the book. So enjoy the clip.
Hello, I read Killing Floor by Lee Child. It's the first in the Jack Reacher series. This is a thriller book, and it's set in rural Alabama about Jack Reacher, who's a former military police officer who gets caught up in intrigue and deceit and corruption, and basically spends the book trying to unravel this back secrets of a tiny little town in Alabama. The book is super fast-paced, and I was on the edge of my seat the entire time. There are a couple of scenes of some pretty intense violence, which makes sense for Jack Reacher because he can kick anybody's butt and take care of himself.
Okay, so The Killing Floor, or actually it's just Killing Floor. Killing Floor is the first Jack Reacher book, and if you end up liking this book, I haven't read the whole series. This is the only one of the series I've read. But if this ends up being something you really enjoy, there are a ton of books in this series. There are 23 full books and 12 novellas. And I have no idea if Lee Child is done writing these or if he's still planning on coming out with more. So there may be more in the future. I'm not sure. But tons and tons and tons and tons to read. The book is, I would say, a thriller is the genre I would put it in. It takes place in this tiny little town in Alabama, and Jack Reacher, our protagonist, walks into town, gets breakfast, and looks over and realizes there's a police SWAT team closing in on him and arrests him for murder. He's been in town for literally half an hour, doesn't know anyone there, has never been to this town before, and is arrested for murder. So he is former military, ex-military police. So that's his background. And I don't want to, more of his background is revealed throughout the book, but in the first chapter, you learn these things about him while he's being interviewed by the detective for the police department. And the rest of the book is him basically trying to prove his innocence and uncover a bunch of corruption throughout the town. And I personally enjoyed the mystery of this a lot because there are some pretty crazy plot twists, and he figures out about 2/3 of the way through the book who's responsible, but you don't know why they're doing what they're doing, and you don't know how he's going to prove it. So this book isn't meant to be a mystery, but it is meant to be suspenseful and kind of keep you on the edge of your seat, and it does. I felt like it did a great job of that. Personally, I read some reviews on Goodreads, and it does really well on Goodreads, but one person wrote that it reminded them of an 80s Schwarzenegger movie, which I did not get that vibe. I mean, he is an action hero for sure, but he also does a bunch of investigation. So he does a lot of sleuthing, and there's a lot of just like kind of PI style investigation. It's not just Schwarzenegger walking in with like ripped off shirt sleeves, oiled up muscled arms, and a gun. So I didn't personally feel that way, but the pacing of this book is intense literally from page one. Page one, he is in the diner and gets arrested and is like, what? I've been in town for half an hour. And so stuff's going down from the very second the book starts. And this is a book where, and I feel like this is pretty typical of thrillers, where you open the book and it's in the middle of the action and you spend a bunch of time trying to catch up with what's going on. And that's how the main character is feeling about it too, because again, he shows up in town and is immediately arrested and has no idea why. So if you are someone who kind of likes to ease in, likes to have an idea of what's going on, and then the action starts, this is not the book for you. If you are someone that wants to be like gripped by the shoulders and like shaken the entire time you're reading the book, then absolutely, that's exactly how I would mark the pacing of these. Now, there's lots and lots of action, but the plot itself is slowly unveiled. You spend the entire time in the dark, just like you are actually trying to figure this out along with the main character. And I found that great because it adds a sense of like suspense, and it is a thriller, so that's kind of what you're expecting. The author, Lee Child, does a great job also of, even though it is a heavy action book, there's a lot of description. He does a good job of creating a sense of place. And, it's told from the first person's perspective, and the main character is really introspective. He doesn't speak a lot, but he observes everything. And since it's told from his perspective, you hear him walking in somewhere and like noting where all of the exits are, noting this guy over there has, a newspaper, but he's not actually reading it. That's suspicious. And he goes into a great amount of detail, but it's in a really natural way, because you totally would expect someone like this to be thinking these things. And so I feel like while it has a lot of description, it's written in such a way that it is still actually furthering the plot, if that makes sense. So it doesn't feel heavy and densely written, even though it actually is kind of densely written, because there is so much description. And because the plot is so slowly untangled. This is a very complex plot that's going on in the book, and it takes a while for him to kind of piece it together and unravel all of the different strings. And that in other books could feel kind of slow, but because there's so much action going on, it is very engrossing, and I wrote breakneck pace through basically the entire book. The characterization, he is not a talker. He is not a sharer. He is someone who is very is a man of few words. He does not like to interact with other people. He is currently homeless because he just wants to be able to freewheel, basically. So you do get some character development in this book through some, not flashbacks per se, but him kind of reminiscing on his childhood in a few different scenes, and learning, you get a little bit more history of like what he did in the military and that sort of a thing. But I would not say, at least in this book, now there are 23 books, so there's lots of time for his character to be fleshed out over the series, but in this particular book, I wouldn't say there's a ton of character development. However, he is given enough, the character development that happens is really useful for figuring out exactly who he is and why he's doing the things that he's doing. Now, that being said, the author kind of picked a stereotypical, like, man's man, not a sharer with other people. He's a loner, you know, the strong, silent military type. So a lot of the character development is drawn on these kind of trope type personality traits. And not that that's a bad thing. I feel like it helps give him more of a sense of personality than he is actually given in the book. If you want someone who is fully fleshed out and is a very well-drawn character, none of the characters in this book are very well drawn. Like I said, it's enough for the story, and the focus of the story is not character development. It is a plot-driven book, not a character-driven book. So it works for the plot of the story. It is not, I wouldn't say it's not a fault of the story. It's just not the focus of this particular story. So, but like I said, this is also a series with 23 books. And for most series, it's pretty typical for there to not be a ton of character development in each book because they have so many books to, you know, you get a little bit of character development in each one. And then by the end of the series, you have this really well-drawn characters. That's pretty standard. So it is maybe worth checking out to see if there's more character development throughout the series. I just don't know because this is the only one I've read. The storyline is plot-driven for sure. It's a plot-centric story with lots of action. I guess I wouldn't say lots of explicit violence. There are a handful of scenes with violence, but these are probably the most graphic violence scenes I've ever read in any book ever. It is, I mean, gross in some scenes. It's gross. So if you are squeamish, I wouldn't even read these. Even though it's just a handful of scenes, some of them are specifically referred to later in the book, like throughout the book, it's referred to. So it's not something that would be easily just like skipped over. So yeah, if you are squeamish, I do not recommend these books for you. So you have been warned. But if you're someone who that sort of thing does not faze you at all, then cool. There's also a fair amount of language. So, you know, if the violence doesn't bother you, but the language will, there's language. I mean, I feel like of the two, the language is by far the least aggressive in the book. But, you know, different things bother different people. And neither may bother you. And if so, I personally enjoyed this book. The language and the violence didn't bother me, but I absolutely understand how they would bother people. The frame and the tone of this book. So the frame of this book is this teeny tiny little town in Alabama that I think is like an hour-ish away from Atlanta somewhere. The frame of this book is important because the whole book has this small town feel to it. It's like this small town that has these deep, dark secrets to them. Oh, I know. Think of the street from Desperate Housewives. And while that was not necessarily like a small town, it was a small neighborhood with these deep secrets. And that's how this book is. It has the small town feel with like the tiny police department. Everybody knows everybody and they've all known each other for 30 years or whatever. But the town is hiding some sort of sinister secret and you don't know what that is. And so the frame of this tiny little town in Alabama gives the book this really like rural, kind of dark and foreboding, like sinister feel to it. And I wrote the tone of the book is darker, foreboding, bleak, very gritty. Very gritty. The grittiest book I've ever read. With a small town feel. This is a contemporary novel. It is written, it's supposed to be now. I mean, it was written in 1997. So it was written 21 years ago. So like some of the technology is slightly outdated, but generally speaking, it's still supposed to be today. And so it's a contemporary book, hard-edged, I wrote political down because you get engrossed in the drama of this small town. So it's not political like, you know, the president is involved or anything like that, but you get these small town politics that end up being entangled in the nonsense that he gets messed up into. Or, you know what I'm saying. And last but not least, this is a suspenseful book. So I definitely think that this is not a book for everyone. However, if you enjoy fast-paced, intense thrillers, you don't mind strong language and unbelievably graphic violence, if you enjoy a book that is more plot-heavy versus character development heavy, and you are hoping to be able to sink your teeth into a pretty lengthy series, then this may be the book for you. Now, I read this one. I did not do audiobook, so I can't speak to the audiobook for this one. If you happen to have listened to this on audiobook, go ahead and comment below and let us know how it is. But yeah, so I hope you enjoyed the little video clip from a couple years ago. I watched it and laughed and laughed and laughed and laughed. But anyway, there'll be 2 more. If you enjoyed this, I hope you did, because there's going to be 2 more videos like this. There's a suspense romance book, and a horror novel. Literally the only horror novel I've ever read. And so look forward to those. And, if you want to make sure you catch those, make sure to subscribe before you leave. And until next time, happy reading.
Hello. I read Rural,
like slooping. That would be snooping around and sleuthing combined. Slooping. Blech. No, that can't be right. No, character driven.